Well, welcome everybody. Hopefully I'm going to double check my audio. Yep, it looks like my audio is working. So I just want to say hello. We are here for Resource Conservation 101 webinar, and we're just going to get started. So generally we'll give everybody a couple minutes to get logged in and get set up, and then we will go ahead and start. What you're seeing on your screen right now is just a snapshot of the attendee controls that you probably see. And I'll go over this again in a minute, but for those of you joining, if you have called in using a telephone, the most important thing is that we want to make sure you have input your audio pin. That allows us to mute you, and I'm not hearing anybody. It looks like everybody's muted, which is great, but without that audio pin, we cannot control the volume, and sometimes there's background noise. So let's see. Looks like we still have about 6 people on the line. I'm going to actually see. Insu, if you want to unmute yourself real quick and give me an idea if we want to go ahead and get started or if we want to wait a couple more minutes. Okay. I'm not hearing her. Insu, are you available to unmute yourself? We are going to need her. Oh, there you are. Hello.
Okay. Sorry about that. I gave you a little scare. Yeah, I heard your question. I think we could wait maybe another minute or two for folks to sign on.
Okay. Do we want to make sure, let's make sure that the other panelists are able to get into their audio quickly as well. So let's just take a quick dry run of that while we're waiting. Kyle, can you access your audio? Kyle, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, great. I know the first time you do it, it takes a few minutes. So no, that's okay. This is a good time for us to get that out of the way. What about Jackie? Are you able to unmute yourself and get on the audio?
Can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you perfect.
Okay. Perfect.
Great. Okay, good. So we've got that out of the way with the presenters. I see that we have one more person who's joined. We still have a number of people that have not joined yet, but I think what would probably be good, I could probably start going through a couple of the initial slides that talk about the GoToWebinar, and hopefully we'll have a few other people. So, okay, let me see. All right. Okay, well, we'll go ahead and it's 5:36, so why don't we go ahead and get started, and hopefully a few other people will join us. So hello, my name is Judy Gregory, and you are here for a webinar on Resource Conservation 101, which is being presented by the Recycleworks Volunteer Academy. So welcome. And before we get really started with the webinar, I want to go over a few things, some housekeeping, some controls for the GoToWebinar, and then we'll kind of dive into some of the content. So basically, welcome to everybody. You're basically going to be here as part of a 2-hour session, and the session is on Resource Conservation 101. It's a no-cost webinar, and basically we want to provide an opportunity to give some general knowledge about the 4 R's, energy, which is reduce, reuse, recycle, compost, which we call rot, energy efficiency, water conservation, and pollution prevention. And the goal is to basically introduce you to these concepts, share about some of the local programs that are available through the county connect you to where you can find out more information on your own, and hopefully enlist you as a future Recycleworks volunteer and send you out into your community to help create some change both at the, the community level and the business level. So throughout the session, we're not really going to take a break, but because this is a webinar, it's a great opportunity for you just to kind of get up if you need to on your own, and then we'll show you a little bit about the webinar and how to use some of the controls so that you can participate. We've tried to make this a very interactive session for you so that you're not just sitting here looking at the screen, but you can participate in some of the activities and be more active. So let me go through that. Our speakers today, and I'll introduce them a little bit more as we go through. Myself, Judy Gregory, I'm with GoToZero Strategies. We have Jackie Falconio, who's with the County of San Mateo, and then we have Kyle Ramey, who's, there we go, who's with the Bay Area Water Supply Conservation Agency. So I look forward to introducing them as we go through. So what I'd like to do is show you how to use GoToWebinar. We do keep all of our attendees muted throughout the presentations, and then we'll unmute you if we have time for some of the Q&A segments so that you can participate in that. We do ask that you try and stay tuned to the presentation, as there are going to be some interactive segments. Just so you know, we can see if you're attentive or not. So there's a few of you that have these little icons next to your name. And basically that has to do with some of the functionality and things that you're doing. So if you're on another website or doing something else, it can tell that you don't have this up on your screen, and we can see that you're not paying attention. So just something to be aware of. And as far as navigating the GoToWebinar, we would like you to participate with both the audio and visual, and it looked like everybody was connected to an audio connection. And if, as I mentioned before, if you are calling in through the telephone, we really ask that you have this audio pin. This isn't your audio pin, this is just a sample of an audio pin, but that you have input that allows us to control you. So that's an important piece of our ability to make sure that there's not something interfering with our presentation. And then you'll have this navigation bar that'll give you some opportunity to participate. We will be doing polls, and I will launch those polls throughout the presentation, but we also give some opportunity for you to ask some questions. So I'm going to show you how we can do that. So when we get to the polling segment, you'll see the presentation on the screen, and then the poll will pop up a slightly different picture of what you're seeing right now. And when you see that pop up, then we ask you to go ahead and click one of the responses in there. Generally, we'll give you 15 seconds or so, maybe a little bit longer, depending on the question to answer, and then we'll close it out. And if you haven't submitted your response, it won't be tabulated in there. So it's not a requirement, but it's a great way for you to be interactive and to just participate in that feedback. The other thing that we have is Q&A segments where we'll allow you to ask questions. We'll try and do the hand raise where you can ask questions, but sometimes we may not have enough time. So the other option, even if you do raise your hand, is to type the question in the question box. That allows us to look through them, and Insu's going to be reviewing them and picking some of the questions that we can answer during the time that we have. So those are the two ways that you'll be able to interact with the session and participate in it. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started with a polling question for you to participate in. So we want to go ahead and practice. What function of GoToWebinar allows the moderator to track and mute attendees? So I'm going to go ahead and launch our first polling question, and you can participate in that. So let's practice. Launch it. Here we go. So you should see a poll pop up on your screen, and you can go ahead and answer that question. We're going to give you a few minutes to do that. Okay. Looks like we're close to everybody voting. We probably have one person who hasn't entered an answer. I'm going to go ahead and close the poll out here in just a second if you want to cast your vote. Okay. So what we got was 71% of you said the audio pin, which was the correct answer. That's the function of GoToWebinar, and that just gives you a little sample of how you can use the polling and answer questions. So audio pin. Okay, so this is what our session is going to look like tonight. We're going to start with Sue giving an introduction to the Recycleworks Volunteer Academy, and then we'll dive into energy efficiency. We're going to do some solid waste and recycling. We're going to do a segment on water. We'll wrap it up with pollution prevention and then some additional information at the end. So this is what our session is going to look like today. And so with that, I want to hand it over to Sue, who is going to start with an introduction to the Recycleworks Volunteer Academy.
Great. Thanks so much, Judy. Hi, everybody. My name is Sue Lim, and I'm with Recycleworks at the County of San Mateo. I recently joined Recycleworks a few months ago to work primarily on this program, on the Recycleworks Volunteer Academy, and it's a great program, and I'm very excited to be part of the RVA team. So the RVA is part of the county's Recycleworks program. Recycleworks promotes resource conservation in the county through the development and implementation of many different types of programs, such as our green business program, our construction and demolition program, and schools program. And Recycleworks used to be part of Public Works here at the county, but we've recently merged with the county's Office of Sustainability. So under the Office of Sustainability, Recycleworks will continue to work with the members of our community and the 20 local jurisdictions in the county to bring our program to your doorstep. Next slide, please. So through the RVA, Recycleworks is offering no-cost resource conservation courses to you, the members of the San Mateo County. And the program's goal is basically to educate and train our community members and to empower you with the necessary tools and knowledge for you to be able to go back out into your communities to promote resource conservation through volunteerism. And this year's RVA offerings, as you see on the slide, include some snapshots, webinars, such as the one that we're doing right now, 2 8-week in-class courses on resource conservation, compost, and solid waste, and some single-session webinars. And if you're interested in more about these offerings, you could definitely go onto the Recycleworks website. And of course, feel free to reach out to me. I'll have, I think there's a slide all the way at the end with my contact information, and I'd be more than happy to talk to you more about these offerings. Next slide, please. So just to introduce the RVA staff, there are 3 core members of the RVA. Jola Mariana is providing high-level program oversight and direction for the program. Kim Springer is the overall program manager for the RVA, and I myself, and Sue Lim, and I'm coordinating the day-to-day operations of the program. And we're also working very closely with Cascadia Consulting Group and their team to develop and implement the RVA program this year. And our entire RVA team, we're working really hard to make sure that our community members have the opportunity to take full advantage of this great county program. Next slide, please, and that's it.
Great, thanks, Sue. So today, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to have 4 topics that we're primarily going to cover: energy efficiency, solid waste and recycling, water conservation and water systems, and pollution prevention. So our first segment, I'm working panels over here, is going to be on energy. So I would like to present Jackie Falconio. She's a resource conservation specialist with the County of San Mateo. She graduated from Sonoma State University, where she double majored in energy management design and economics. She focused her studies on the design and practices of energy efficient buildings while directing her electives towards local government urban planning. She interned at a local nonprofit agency, Solar Sonoma County, and worked at Tesla as a product specialist to assist opening a new store in Marin County. until late 2014. She's now working for the San Mateo County Energy Watch, spearheading their zero net energy initiatives by the county by providing training and developing a county-wide strategic plan. She also assists local school districts to utilize their state funding for energy efficiency projects. Welcome, Jackie.
Thank you for that intro. If we could, okay, here we go. So I just wanted to do a brief overview of who provides our energy here in Northern California, specifically in San Mateo County. We have what's called an investor-owned utility in California, which would be PG&E. They are exclusive service providers, which means that we buy all of our electric and natural gas from them. But what that primarily means is that they own all the infrastructure in California or in Northern California. So we're not necessarily buying our power from them, we're buying the power through their lines. And they're highly regulated by the California Public Utilities Commission. Our money that we're actually goes to the CPUC first, and then the CPUC hands the money down to PG&E after that. The goal of having this investor utility that runs the whole thing is safe, reliable energy at a reasonable price. And the utilities own all the generation and distribution infrastructure, like I said. So other utilities or power plants, they all use PG&E lines and equipment. If we could go to the next slide. Okay, this is just a small idea of what type of power we have here in California. A lot of our power comes from natural gas for heating, and then we have a lot of nuclear in California actually, and unlike the East Coast, we have very little coal. It's very expensive to ship coal out to California, and PG&E itself doesn't have any coal at all. So we have a relatively clean energy source through PG&E. Okay, go to the next slide. Something that you might have heard going around is called a CCE, or sometimes called a CCA. It's Community Choice Energy or Aggregation. And what this is it's a organization that purchases clean energy from renewable energy sources. So solar farms, wind farms, geothermal sometimes, and they use the utility company's infrastructure to deliver it to customers, and the customers buy their energy from this Community Choice Energy Association. So we have Peninsula Clean Energy in San Mateo County. You get a little bit of a better idea of where exactly your energy is coming from. You know that you're buying it from a renewable source. Okay, if we could go to the next slide. So here is our first question of the energy section. A utility company, example PG&E, will encourage you to practice energy efficiency. True or false?
Okay, so Jackie, you had 83% answer true and 17% answer false.
Great. Well, they have an idea of what's going on with our utility companies, because the answer is true. Our utilities here in California are what we call decoupled. Decoupled refers to the disassociation of the utility's profits from its sale of the energy. This makes the utility indifferent to selling the product and improves their ability to encourage energy efficiency and distributed generation, which is like rooftop solar and wind farms and things like that. The idea behind this is that the money that you're paying PG&E on your energy bill, it's actually the cost that it costs PG&E to send you that energy. So they're not making a profit on the bill that you're sending them every month, that check that you're going through. And these two graphs at the bottom of the slide, they're showing the energy use per person over time. That's the one on the right. In California, the energy use per person since 1975 has stayed relatively flat. And what that tells us is that we're using a lot more efficient products, because in 1975, we didn't have computers or cell phones and iPads to be charging. So there really wasn't as much used, but each item that was used a lot more energy than what we're using right now. And that is not the case for the rest of the United States. The rest of the United States, their line, you can see that in red, is going up over time. They're using a lot more energy. And the reason that we can get to this flat line is because our utilities are decoupled. Okay, if we could go to the next slide. What is energy efficiency? Energy efficiency is really the idea of using less energy to provide the same service. So we're all going to light our houses and have our computers and things like that, but if you can do it more efficiently, you're going to use less energy to run all of those things than you would have before. You're not giving up anything to use that utility. Meeting future demand. This is how we fill new supply in California. The population is continuously growing here in California, and the utilities have to still provide safe and reliable energy. The first approach that they have is to provide energy efficiency products or programs. They want people to use energy more efficiently. The second is renewables. Rooftop solar is a huge portion, and it's growing every day, of the percentage of overall energy use or energy production in California. And distributed generation, that is basically small-scale energy production. So rooftop solar, small wind on farms or in the hills, things like that. And their last resort is to revert to conventional efficient fossil fuel generation. So the utilities really don't want to turn on another power plant to provide more energy. They have programs where they will pay people to cut off their energy to really turn off all of their machines before they would turn on a whole new power plant, because it's incredibly expensive, and that is their last resort. Okay, if we could go to the next slide. Funding for energy efficiency. There are a lot of energy efficiency programs out there, and every person that pays a PG&E bill every month, they're actually paying a small public goods charge in the range of a few dollars, typically less than $1 sometimes, and that money goes to the California Public Utility Commission. And the CPUC then gives money to the investor-owned utilities, in our case PG&E, with regulations on what they can spend the money on. It's very highly regulated. PG&E has to follow many rules, and they have to implement certain energy efficiency programs. A lot of them are mandated, so there was certain allocation goes to schools and certain allocation goes to small businesses. As you can see here, the PG&E energy efficiency programs, they really try and hit each sector. So there are a lot of commercial, residential, industrial, and agricultural programs available, and that's in different types of funding. Can you go to the next slide? California has really set some high goals for energy efficiency and renewable energy in the future. AB 32, which is the Global Warming Solutions Act, it aims to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 15% below 2005 levels by 2020, and that just got updated to 80% below 2005 levels by 2050. We also have the Renewable Portfolio Standard, the RPS, which is mandating that each utility must have an energy mix of at least 50% renewable energy by 2030. There's also some strict regulations on building code, specifically Title 24, which is the energy portion of the standard building code. The laws in California will make all new residential construction must be zero net energy by 2020. Zero net energy means that the building produces as much renewable energy as it consumes over the course of a year. So over a year, it'll be net zero energy. And then for commercial construction, all new commercial construction must be zero net energy by 2030. So there's some really big goals for buildings in California that we're going to. And building code right now, any building that has to be built, it has to basically be LEED silver. It doesn't have to be registered, but building code has gotten that far that LEED silver is basically what you legally have to build now. So LEED silver isn't quite as innovative as it used to be. Our building codes are really progressive. Okay, if we could go to the next slide. Which type of energy do homes in San Mateo County use more of? Electricity or natural gas? Let's get the polling up here.
Okay, we've got about 50% of the people have voted, 63. Give you another few more seconds.
Okay.
Looks like we have one last person. You want to vote? Okay, I'm going to close it, and then Bob told me I can actually share it, so I'm going to try something new this time to share the results.
Okay, well, 100% electricity. Wow. Okay, well, if we go to the next slide, actually, or we can show the correct answer is actually natural gas, surprisingly enough.
Did you? Oh, wait, hold on. Oh, sorry, wait.
It's okay.
I'm still showing. Oh, I have to hide the poll. I'm figuring out new things.
There we go.
As we go. Is that the slide you wanted?
Yes, it is. Okay. Natural gas is actually 61% of our energy consumption in San Mateo County. The big reason behind that is our climate. Most people in San Mateo County do not need air conditioning for the large majority of the year. There might be a few days in the summer where it gets a little bit unbearable, but for the most part, air conditioning is not something that we have, and air conditioning is the major use of electricity for most cities. So the fact that we have no air conditioning typically, and a lot of heating for people on the coast side, they have a milder temperature. That's why natural gas outweighs the electricity in our county. Okay, so we could go to the next slide. Energy use in homes. This kind of shows the PG&E Home Money Saver. It's a great website where you can check out the different energy hogs in your house. Everything that's blue in the house is something that you can click on, and it will tell you whether it's electricity or natural gas and about how much it consumes over the course of the year. There's also things like your vampire power, which is becoming more of a problem as people get more gadgets in their homes. Every TV, computer, game console, everything that's plugged in all the time, even if it's off, it's actually pulling a small amount of electricity at all times. We like to be able to turn things on right away, and it'll pop up, turning on your TV by just pressing power. In order for it to do that, it has to be using that small amount of energy all the time. So vampire loads are becoming a huge issue in the United States now because of all of our fun gadgets, especially here in the Bay Area. Okay, if we could go to the next slide. So I wanted to get an idea of what you guys thought were the most cost-effective upgrades to save energy in your home. If you could just type those into the chat box, or
that actually should be the question box. So we got that.
The question box. Okay.
Great. Yeah. So.
Great. Okay.
Don't see anybody typing anything yet. So if you do have, okay. So Paul, it looks like. Wait, let's see. Paul said solar panel.
Okay.
Joe said window upgrades.
Okay.
Matthew said use heater that use electricity.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have anybody else?
I can go with those.
Okay, perfect.
So if we go to the next slide, I have the list of the top 10 most cost-effective upgrades for energy efficiency in your home. And the number one is actually duct sealing. So putting insulation and sealing all the holes in your ducts is the most cost-effective thing. But people don't go to that because you don't see it. It's not cool. But a lot of the most energy efficient and cost-effective things that you can do in your home are the things that you don't see. So attic insulation, insulating your pipes and your hot water heaters, wall insulation. These things, you have huge leaks in your house. In a regular house, you can lose up to 30% of the heat out of your house. So you're literally just throwing 30% of your heat away. And that's because of improperly installed insulation and ducts being not installed properly or just being inefficient. And so we really encourage people to do these type of renovations or retrofits before they look to efficient appliances or solar or things like that, because this is what will bring your energy bill down. Okay, if we could go to the next slide. So your home is a huge energy hog. You know, you've got your heater and you can make that as efficient as possible, but even if you have the most efficient building, if you fill it full of electronics that are on all the time and, you know, hot tubs and pools and all these things, and then you use them constantly or leave them on and leave all your LED lights on, you're still going to have a high energy bill and you're not going to be energy efficient. So it's really a trifecta of these three aspects of your life that you need to address in order to really have an efficient lifestyle or home. It really does depend on your behavior as well. We can go to the next slide. Okay, so here are some of the residential energy efficiency programs that we offer in San Mateo County. We have the Low Income Energy Savings Assistance Program, which is funded by PG&E. It's called El Concilio. And then we have the Moderate Income and Homeowners Association direct install programs, which are offered through my program, the San Mateo County Energy Watch, that I work for with El Concilio and Ecology Action. Those are the implementers. And then for single family and multifamily, there is always the Energy Upgrade California program, which offers rebates for the types of renovations that I mentioned a few slides before. So they can help give you a rebate for insulation and a new furnace and windows and things like that. So you can work with contractors that have all been certified and vetted through this program, and there's a lot of great opportunity there. You can go to the next slide. So this is just a kind of a basic graph of how you're charged for energy. So for Tier 1, you start off being charged a very low amount of 13 cents per kilowatt hour. And as you use energy throughout the month, you start using more and you hit a certain point, and then you jump up to 15 cents. And then you jump up to 32 cents once you hit a certain level of usage. So the more you use, the more expensive it gets. So it's also, you're not only saving kilowatt hours when you're going towards these energy efficiency programs, but you're also saving yourself from hitting these upper tiers of energies and PG&E rates. Okay, next slide. Why focus on energy efficiency? So one of the first comments about what they thought was most cost effective was solar panels, which are a great opportunity, but you're going to be spending about twice as much on solar panels if you don't look at it energy efficiency first. So on this slide we have two different homes, and the first home, home A, is your regular average bill. The average house in America uses about 6,000 kilowatt hours per year. You'd need about a $19,000 worth of solar to cover that energy use in a year, which means you need about 450 square feet of roof space, which is often not available. Whereas if you look to home B, which uses about half of that energy, which is typical for a really efficient house, you're only spending about $9,000 on solar, and that's to cover all of your energy for the entire year. So it really pays to look at efficiency before renewables. Okay, if we could go to the next slide. So here are a few resources that would be great for you guys to check out. The Recycleworks has a lot of opportunity for resources and more on really everything in your home. And then we have the San Mateo County Energy Watch, which is my program, and we have a few things for small businesses as well if you work or own a small business in San Mateo County. The City and County Association of Governments, which is CCAG, they're our partner, and they have a lot of really cool initiatives going on around not just energy efficiency, but climate change and in sustainability in general. And then Energy Upgrade, or BayREN, that's the organization that does the Energy Upgrade California Rebate Program. And PG&E My Energy, it gives you a really cool insight into your energy use and when you're using your energy and how you can change that behavior. Okay, so go to the next slide. I think that's it.
Great. Thank you very much, Jackie. So we have 1 or 2 minutes that we could answer questions if you want to type those in your question box. And just as we move through the rest of the segments, if you have questions, go ahead and just start typing those into the question box. That'll give us a chance to kind of look through them as the presenter's speaking and pick out which ones we can possibly answer and have that done beforehand, so that's really helpful to us. And one other thing, we don't have a question yet, so I wanted to point out, you should have a handout section in your panel right down towards the bottom, probably one of the last things down there. And INSU has created a handout with a lot of resources for the different programs related to energy, water, pollution prevention, and waste and recycling. So you can open that up and click on that link and actually download that to your computer during this session, and then we'll make sure to send you a copy of it afterwards as well. But I wanted to just alert you to that. So I don't see any questions that have popped up yet. We have about 1 minute left. Did you have anything else you wanted to share, Jackie?
I don't think so.
Okay, well,
I hit a lot in 15 minutes.
You did. So I wanted to put your information up there. If you wanted to reach Jackie to ask her any other questions, this is the contact information where you can reach her. Well, great. That was, talk about perfect timing. So we're going to turn 6:10 right now, so we're right on time. And I think we'll go ahead and move on. I did want to let you know that if you are interested in energy efficiency, conservation, more programs, and you'd like to find out more information, one of the ways you can do that is by electing to participate in our Master Resource Conservation course. So this is one of our 8-week courses. It starts on January 20th. It runs 3 hours from 6 to 9 p.m. for 8 consecutive weeks, and we will be doing a deeper dive into energy, including a number of other topics. So Laura McCoyne is the instructor. She's the lead instructor for this, although we have a number of special guest instructors that will participate as well. You can access a link to sign up for this on the Recycleworks website, and then you're going to want to look under, there's a link up there, and I'll show you when we get there for signing up. So just something you can look forward to. Great. Okay. Well, at this time we are going to start one of my favorite topics, which is solid waste and recycling. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself first. So my name is Judy Gregory, and I'm with GoToZero Strategies. I am contracted with Cascadia Consulting, the lead contractor for the Recycleworks Volunteer Academy, doing this. And I have worked in the solid waste and recycling field for over 25 years. I primarily work with businesses and communities around the state to implement zero waste and strategies to get us to zero waste. And I've also spent a number of years developing training and curriculum for organizations like this one, which is focused on sustainability, resource management, zero waste recycling. So I'm very excited to be here with you today and share some information on the local systems and just in general what the state's doing and kind of how we sort of got to this state of waste and how we've been working more recently how to get out of wasting and into doing other things. So what is solid waste? Well, do you think about the things that you're throwing away? Probably not. But when we talk about municipal solid waste, we're talking about those things that we're basically disposing. And they're being sent to landfills, they're being sent to incinerators, and it's stuff that we don't need anymore. But what is it? When you look at what those materials are, they're durable goods, they're packaging, they're organic materials, they're construction and demolition. They're things that we no longer have a need for, and they may not have a value to us, but does that necessarily make them waste? And in short, we basically need to shift our mindset to thinking of things as resources again. And so today, that's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about how waste was created. We're going to look at some of the national and local trends on disposal. We're going to dive a little bit into landfills and how they've evolved and what role they play today. And then finally, we're going to talk about resource management, reducing, reusing, recycling, composting, and other things that we can do to kind of move towards zero waste. Let me get it. So the first thing I want to say is that in nature, there is no waste. In nature, things are in cycles. The earth itself is a closed-loop system, and waste does not naturally occur because there's no way in nature. So the earth naturally uses waste byproducts from one system to fuel another system. Waste creation is a new product. It comes out of human culture and it comes out of human societies. And so what we want to do is basically look at better systems and processes that can mimic nature so that we're not creating these massive amounts of waste. And just to give you an idea of things that we consider waste really do have a value in a system. So here you can see scrap metal, which would be discarded from industrial processes, can actually be used to create new metal products. And you know, an old bike that's been broken can actually be repaired to create a new bike that could benefit somebody that would need it. Even things that we think of that wouldn't have value, you know, uneaten food scraps or, you know, leftovers of food actually have high nutritional value for our soils. And so all of these things that are waste to us have a benefit in a circular system, and that's what we want to get to. So how is garbage created? Well, waste is leftovers that we dispose of. It doesn't necessarily mean it's garbage. We all have things we need to get rid of that we no longer need that may not have a value to us, but does that really mean they need to go into the garbage? So most of the stuff that we have, that we throw away, does have a beneficial value in a sustainable resource management system. And the EPA estimates that 75% of what we throw away is actually recyclable, even though we only recycle about 30% of it. So when recyclable, reusable, compostable materials are actually thrown into the garbage and then they go into a trash truck and they're compacted and mixed together, they're degraded by that process, and they're usually so degraded by that process that then we can't effectively reuse, recycle, or compost them. So that's why we want to look at strategies that will eliminate a lot of these processes that we currently do that make our materials no longer manageable. On a national level, we're throwing a lot of stuff away. So the EPA, which is the Environmental Protection Agency, was actually created in 1970, and they've been tracking disposal for over 30 years. So according to a report by them in 2012, we generated about 251 million tons a year of trash. That's just the trash. That's 4.38 pounds per day per person. 87 million tons is then either recycled or composted, so we have a diversion rate of 34.5%. These are significant numbers, and that's a great percentage, but basically our generation over the last 50 years has tripled and disposals doubled, so we're still wasting too much. So right now we compost about 21 million tons a year, we recycle 65 million tons, and then we incinerate another 29 million tons, and we landfill about 134 million tons a year. So these are materials that we're throwing away that could have a value to our economy, to the planet, and to the population, and so we really want to take advantage of those resources. On the local level, which you guys are probably, you know, very interested in, these are some San Mateo County numbers. We're looking at the county-wide generates about 4 4.01 pounds per person per day. This is 2013 numbers. There have been slight increases in the more recent years. However, countywide has declined 31% in what it disposes since 2004. So basically all the county is down. Even though the last couple years there have been slight increases, mostly that's probably related to the economic rebound. But what that equates to is over 500,000 pounds, about 543 pounds of solid waste generated in the county in 2013. And then this slide right here is some data from CalRecycle, and this is just basically showing how some of the individual communities in the county are doing. So the yellow highlighted shows communities that have under 3 pounds per person per day right now, so Belmont, East Palo Alto, Foster City, and the unincorporated area, as well as Pacifica. And then one community that hasn't quite reached its target of what it was targeted to reduce by, but they're really close, 7.6 pounds per person, and their goal is 7.5. So that just gives you a little bit of information on the local level. And then one of the things that's really interesting is that what's in our waste. And there's lots of different ways to kind of look at it and extract the information, but this report by As You Sow estimates that there's actually $11.4 billion worth of valuable recyclables being landfilled each year, primarily through packaging and containers. And they say it represents about 40% of the U.S. waste stream. So it's not just trash, it's materials with a value, and when you take those materials out and you employ people and you create jobs and you build infrastructure, there's a huge, the value is exponential. And so that's the importance of looking at these systems and how we can change them. So what are we recycling? Well, surprisingly, the materials you might think would have very high recycling rates probably would have less than you think. So one of the highest recycled materials is lead acid batteries. That's predominantly because there's a system in place that collects a fee on these before you buy a new one. But other things like aluminum cans, right around 50%. Even though it's a great infrastructure, we can have another aluminum can from an aluminum can within 60 days, the full cycle, and it cuts out a huge number of upstream activities that don't have to take place. Next, I think we're going to talk about plastic is only about 30%, and we obviously know the devastation going on in the water systems and the oceans from plastic, so it's a huge issue. We want to get those recycling rates up. And then other materials, even below 30%, electronics, and we'll talk a little bit more about the issues and the toxins associated with electronics, the need to get recycling up, but the rates are very low. So how do we get to the levels that we want? How do we start getting people to participate? There's a couple different ways, but one of the key ways in which we can kind of move things forward and build infrastructure is through legislative actions. California has been extremely proactive over the last 25 years in this area. We're a leader in the nation as far as recycling and environmental initiatives. So here's just a few of the key ones that are really important in California and that those of us sort of working in this industry deal with on a day-to-day basis. So historical landmark piece of legislation passed back in 1989. It's called AB 939. And this basically set a diversion goal in California to achieve 50% reduction of the material going into landfills by the year 2000. That was very progressive, and it was just a great piece of legislation that basically a lot of us working in this industry are here and have jobs because of this legislation, and it's done some great things. More recently, though, we've actually had a number of key pieces of legislation start to come through, and one of them that passed in 2011 was AB 341, which we call mandatory commercial recycling, even though it affects both commercial and businesses. So unlike AB 939, which mostly put the impetus on communities and cities to oversee the diversion and to implement programs, and each of these cities has to submit reports to the state showing what programs they're doing and what levels they're at. AB 341 puts impetus on the businesses and the apartment owners, and it says if you generate more than 4 cubic yards a week of waste or you have more than 5 units, you need to implement a recycling program. We'll talk a little bit more about that. That came out of AB 32, which actually passed prior to AB 341, which we know as the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Act. And what's interesting about that is it was predominantly focused on reductions through other avenues, and we realized that there's a lot of CO2 being produced from landfills. And so there was a piece of the legislation that says, okay, well, you know what? We need to reduce 5 million metric tons of CO2 from landfills, and we're going to do that by taking organics out of the landfill. And that piece of legislation is why we now have our most recent law, which is AB 1826, which we call the mandatory organics recycling. And that is saying that starting 2016, businesses that generate 8 cubic yards a week or more and apartments of organics need to implement organics recycling programs, and that ramps up so that the next year it goes down if you generate more than 4 cubic yards. So lots of really exciting legislation going on in California and things that are just spurring us forward. Lots to do though, and a lot of infrastructure and other things that are needed to really get us there. Okay, so let's get a poll going. So I'm going to kind of switch gears here a little bit. Let me get to my polls. Which of the following would not be considered solid waste? What do you think? Let me pop the poll up here. I'm going to go ahead and launch that. You should see that on your screen. Your choices are food scraps, diapers, styrofoam packaging, or industrial chemical byproducts. I've got about half of you who voted, so we're going to wait for a few more people. We have a couple more. Anybody else ready to vote? Okay, we're going to go ahead and close that down, and let me share the results. So the results are 40% of you said food scraps and 40% of you said industrial chemical byproducts, and the others said diapers. So food scraps, diapers, and styrofoam packaging are all things that those of us working in the solid waste and recycling industry deal with on a day-to-day basis. Industrial chemical byproducts are not something that's generally handled in the waste stream, so that has a different process, and so we typically consider them not part of the solid waste stream. I'm going to go ahead and hide that, and let's go back. All right, so we're going to get into landfills a little bit. I want to give you an idea of these beasts that we have out there that are collecting huge amounts of our resources. So a little bit of a historical perspective. There's basically evidence of the creation of waste that goes back to the time of hunter-gatherers, when early man began to actually congregate in small villages and communities. There's studies of Mayan civilization that show that they were actually a highly disposable society and that they generated large amounts of waste. And there's other studies on Native Americans where they can actually pinpoint 5+ pounds a day of waste created. But it really wasn't until around 500 BC, let me close that up, that that municipal dumps were actually started to be created. So basically back in Athens, Greece, they said, you know, all waste has to be dumped at least a mile outside of the city. And then we don't really see much on this issue until the 1800s. And that's because as America began to industrialize, we started to have a lot of new waste that were being created. In addition to that, people started to live in towns and communities where there were many more people living locally. And actually the practice was just to throw trash into the street for the animals to eat. So we all have heard that diseases, the bubonic plague, typhoid fever, things like that started to pop up, unsanitary conditions living in the cities. And basically by the end of the 1800s, government began to realize, you know what, we really need to do something or we're going to have problems. In 1934, the first sanitary landfill was actually built right here in California in Fresno. And in the 30s and 40s, there was definitely momentum to shift to the use of sanitary landfills. They recognized that open dumps were resulting in fires and odors and vermin. But truthfully, even though there was a movement, it wasn't probably till the 80s that Congress actually started getting involved and saying, you know what, we need to implement some stricter guidelines for lining landfills and for collecting the leachate and making sure that we're not going to have these sites that are contaminated that we're going to have to pay for years to come. So the whole idea of sanitary landfills and them operating constructed in a manner where they're safer for the environment is a relatively new thing. The landfill that's predominantly used in San Mateo County is Ox Mountain. It's located in Half Moon Bay. It's owned by Republic Services, and it's been a lined landfill since 1993, back when some of the regulation went in. It does have a leachate collection system that collects 20 to 30,000 gallons per day. And they've actually planted 1,700 poplar trees that feed off the leachate, and they're thriving. There's 27 acres in total, but 191 are permitted to be used as landfill, and they've used about 150 of those acres so far. So the 40 acres left have a life expectancy of about 25 to 26 years, putting us out to 2040. There's also an energy collection system in place that powers nearly 12,000 homes in Alameda and Palo Alto. Other disposal, local disposal, is the Hay Road landfill and the Newbie Island sanitary landfill. And then there's a number of transfer stations that will take in material and then transport them out to more distant landfills. So what is the issue with landfilling? Well, the two of the predominant issues are the methane and leachate. So methane is a greenhouse gas, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. It's more potent than CO2, and it is emitted into the atmosphere through the decomposition of the organics in the landfill. And then leachate is a groundwater contaminant that, especially through unlined or poorly lined landfills, leaks into our groundwater. So one of the issues is that organics going into landfill are predominantly responsible for the creation of both of these, and so getting organics out of landfill is a very big focus in the state right now. One of the key drivers for zero waste actually has been the connection between wasting and greenhouse gas emissions and climate change or global warming. And US EPA and scientists all over the world have actually been documenting these connections for the last 20 years. And unfortunately, landfills are one of the largest sources of greenhouse gas, and the majority of the gases they produce are methane. So methane, the issue with methane is that it's 72 times more potent than carbon dioxide over a 20-year horizon. And that affects the greenhouse effect. So it acts more quickly than CO2, and CO2 has a 100-year lifespan. And so I can't stress how important it is when we look at it. A lot of the focus is on what comes out of the tailpipe, but methane is so much more potent than CO2, and the emissions from it out of landfill have a huge impact on the atmosphere and the issues with the greenhouse gases. Leachate is another issue, especially because a lot of landfills were built near waterways. Older landfills especially are affected, have effects on the water quality near them, and the leachate from a landfill can vary depending on the age of the landfill and the type of waste it contains. You have to remember a lot of these landfills prior to regulation received huge amounts of toxic materials and chemicals and metals that are now mixed with all the soupy food and water from rain, and so they're creating this sort of toxic mess that just seeps down into the waterways. Basically, getting this material and having systems in that collect it is one way that we can avert some of the issues associated with it, but really making sure, you know, having lined landfills is so important, and just putting less into the landfills so that we're not creating these issues is probably more important. As far as garbage collection and recycling services in the county, there are a number of different haulers that operate within the different unincorporated and incorporated communities in the county. So using recycleworks.org is a resource for you on the website, and I'm going to switch over there real quick in a minute. You can identify who the haulers are. You can switch over to their websites and find out what they accept, what special programs they might have. There's recycling tips and just a lot of great information on the website. So this is the website, recycleworks.org. And I'm going to actually ask you a polling question, switch over to the website real quick. So next polling question, let's get you guys going. How many times more potent is methane as a greenhouse gas as opposed to CO2? I'm going to go ahead and launch this. Is it 100, 72, 10, or 20 times more potent? Let's get a few more people to vote. Less than half of you. Hopefully I'm not putting you to sleep out there. Let's get a couple more people to vote. Looks like we have about 5 or 6 more people that need to vote. Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and close it. I got one more in there. Okay, so let me share. It looks like most of you, 60%, said 72 times, and then we had a few of you say 20 or 100. So the answer is 72 times more potent. Big number, really important, so just keep that in the back of your brains next time you throw something away. All right, so I closed that. Actually, let me go. I'm going to switch real quick here. I wanted to go back to the website. So I have this already charged up for you. This is the Recycleworks website. And just to give you an idea, we'll come back here a couple times. Over here under the Reduce, Reuse, Recycle is a place where you can click on any of these links like Find Your Garbage Company, information for your home or work, so depending on what type of services you're looking for. And you'll see when I pull this up, there's that map that we had in the PowerPoint, and basically it gives you lots of information about the curbside programs, different programs that are available in your area. It gives you a list of all the haulers that are operating and which areas they operate in. And what you can do is you can actually click on, these are hot links, so you can click on any of the names, especially if you know the company that already services you. You click on that, it'll take you to their website, and then you can find out more specific information about the programs that they offer. Okay. All right, so let me get back. Sometimes it takes a second. Let me go ahead and get back to the presentation. Okay, so we've learned that in nature there's no waste. However, we live in a modern society and we generate and dispose of a lot of materials. We call this waste, and we do it on a daily basis. So what we need to think about is how do products, packaging, food leftovers, agricultural byproducts, and landscape trimmings fit into a resource management system? How do we make those not become waste anymore? We need to start by identifying systems, structures, and processes associated to keeping these things out of the landfill. And to do that, I want to share with you some of the terminology and the things that we talk about in our world and what they mean and how they affect you. So in the SRM hierarchy, I have to first mention reduce, reuse, recycle. So it's probably one of the most well-known coined terms in SRM. It was actually coined in 1970 at the first Earth Day, and it's basically come to represent what most consider the cornerstone for, this growing environmental movement. But what we want to do is we want to not just focus on these words, but it's important to focus on the actual order in which they're listed. Most of us are very familiar with recycling. We know it, we love it, but the reduce and the reuse are important. And then we have this new one the fourth R, which we'll call rot. Most of us probably know it better as compost, but RRR and a C just wouldn't make sense, so we call it the 4 R's. And that's really important, and it's going to become even more important with 1826 and keeping those organics out of the landfill. So, but whether there's 3 R's or 4 R's or 5 R's, it's this whole idea that that people understand these terms and they use them in a lot of different ways to educate, and we can have a lot of fun with them, and we can use them to get people to make change by identifying what R's are important in their system. So one of the things I thought we could have you guys do, and I know it looks like there's quite a few questions starting to pop up, so Insu, maybe you can help with this, but maybe you could share an R term that you would think would be important to eliminating waste in your life. So go ahead and type those into your box. And I'm going to try and see if I can see a few of them popping up. Can anybody share any R's that they think would be useful to helping them get waste out of their life or eliminate wasting practices? I'm waiting to see. Sometimes it takes people a second to pop in there. So I'm just trying to give. Okay. Well, we didn't get anybody to respond to that one, so I'm just going to go ahead and move on. Okay, so I'm going to start by basically going through what reduce, reuse, recycle mean. So waste reduction is basically first on the hierarchy, and there's a reason. It's because it's actually the best way to save resources. If we don't use them in the first place, then that's, that's the best. We're basically, when we reduce what we use, we're reducing the materials that were consumed to create those products, and reduction has an exponential effect on reducing waste because it also helps reduce water, the energy, and the time spent making those unnecessary products. So waste reduction is huge. And on a big picture, there's lots of things that commercial businesses and government can do to help reduce waste. So reducing commercial packaging, implementing policies regarding purchasing and contracts to reduce waste, redesigning products is huge, and ultimately banning a product if it's problematic and we can't use it. So some of the things that you can do at home to help reduce waste: install low waste landscaping, grass cycle, you can replace light bulbs with longer lasting light bulbs, eliminate disposable dishware. I mean, how many of us use paper plates and cups now to be convenient, but it's so wasteful. Using all natural cleaning products, and even just considering the packaging on products when we buy them is helpful. So next on the hierarchy is reuse. And it's not something that's new, although we're kind of seeing a revamping of reuse that's become cool and different. So, but pre-World War II, reuse was huge, making old clothing into quilts, and something always got passed down in the family. It was very commonly known. And then there were a lot of other things that we did to promote reuse, like there were thrift shops and repair shops. We do garage sales and swap meets. So it's kind of been around for a long time, but now we're seeing this new modernization of it, and eBay, probably one of the most successful businesses of the 21st century. It's a reuse company. Other things like FreeCycle, Craigslist, Street Bank, lots of new things that we're seeing come online. Even you'll see a lot of communities share about or repair cafes and creative reuse in your schools. So lots of new things happening with reuse to make it more common and well known. On the recycling and composting, it's at the bottom of our hierarchy. Of course, it's something that we all know more about and kind of do on a day-to-day basis, but it's really last on our list of the traditional three. And while we place recycling further down the cycle, it's probably one of the most understood and utilized activities of all three. So people really like it. They like the feel-good feeling. So recycling is actually the process of turning used products into raw material that can be used to make new products. And in doing so, we actually conserve natural resources and reduce pollution because recycling reduces energy consumption. So basically it takes less energy to recycle a product than make a new one by extracting the raw virgin materials. This slide right here just shows the energy savings associated with using recycled material versus virgin material. It shows up in a lot of different ways in our community through recycling programs, curbside, commercial programs, and such. And then composting is basically the same as recycling, but it's specific to organic materials. So compost materials are yard trimmings, they can be sewage sludge, they can be agricultural byproducts and waste. And basically what we do is we can either compost through the windrow process, we can compost through anaerobic digestion, which is a closed system that captures the energy. So the top picture of the compost creates a material that then we use on agriculture that helps retain water in the soils, it helps improve soil quality, whereas the latter, the digestion, it's more for the creation of energy, and then there is a digestate that comes out of that as well that can be land applied and used. So let's see if we can get you guys to participate in the question box. Want you guys to maybe share what's an item that you currently use in your day-to-day life that you could eliminate or consider eliminating, or an alternative product that you could use that would help you reduce wasting. So go ahead, let's see, bottled water. Paula Fleming said bottled water. That's a great one. Matthew Jacob says reduce plastic bottles to glass. Love those. I don't use bottled water, eliminated it a while ago. Such a great example. Anybody else have anything they want to share? Okay, well, we'll look back in a little bit. We'll go ahead and let me check my timing. Got a couple more minutes here, and I'm actually almost done. So zero waste, that is probably a term that you've started to hear. We've already covered the basic R's, but this zero waste is kind of like the mascot of reduce, reuse, recycle, and ROD. It kind of encompasses all those terms. It's a term that's catching on around the globe. It's something tangible. It's kind of exciting. It's like the superstar of recycling. So you're probably starting to hear more and more zero waste. You're probably starting to hear communities adopting zero waste resolutions. But the basics of zero waste is that we don't want to burn, we don't want to bury, and we don't want toxics. So those are the three key premises behind zero waste. And one of the ways to actually get there is to look at closed loop systems. That's another term that you've probably started to hear. And it's used in a lot of different industries, but it's important in our industry as well. So in our industry, when we say closed loop, we're talking about a circular process where wastes are nearly eliminated, or the process of wasting them is eliminated, and instead we use feedstocks for new products. So in a closed loop system, we basically want to prevent waste by better design and better utilization of resources. We want to integrate a resource management system into that. We want to reduce the extraction of resources. And we do it through something that looks like this system. So as you look at this graphic, you could see that the normal progression is that we extract raw materials from the earth. We put them through industrial processes to then turn them into raw materials to use in the manufacturing process. And you can, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but it goes this way. Then we make products, we distribute products, we sell products, and ultimately we as people buy them and we use them. And once we do use them, oftentimes they just go to disposal, and it's a linear system. that's it, they're done. But in a resource management, a closed loop system, then we want to send those products to recycling. Some of them then get reused in the same form that they're in. Others go straight back into the manufacturing of products, and some do have to go a step back into processing first. But ultimately, you cut out this very, very important raw material extraction, which, just so you know, 1 ton of product thrown away at the end created 70 tons of waste through these processes here. So it's not so much the 1 ton you're throwing away in your home, it's the 70 tons that was used to create that product. That's so important for us and why we want to reduce or reuse. Okay, so here's our last polling question. In a closed loop system, what part of the process is generally eliminated or reduced? Go ahead and launch that right now. You should be able to see that on your system. What's eliminated or reduced? Is it raw material extraction, processing and manufacturing, product packaging, or recycling? Ooh, I can see the responses come through, and you guys are split. We need a few more people to vote so we can break the three-way tie. Okay, I'm going to give you 1 or 2 more seconds. We're going to close it. Anybody? Here we go. We're going to close it. Okay, so I'm going to share the results here. 60% of you said raw material extraction, which is actually the correct answer. 20% said processing and manufacturing, and 20% said product packaging. So the big thing that we want to eliminate is the raw material extraction, although all those other things are great as well. Okay, so that pretty much wraps it up for my section on the waste or recycling, and I will open it up to see if anybody has questions. I'm going to look through them, and Sue will probably look through them as well to see if we can see any real quick. If we show the PowerPoint. Sorry, I'm reading through these. I don't mean to be mumbling. Okay, so the only thing I saw is 1 point of clarification that Joe said 500,000 tons, not pounds per year. Okay, so I know it was 500,000 pounds. So on the slide, so it looks like that's tons, so Joe clarified that, and I don't see any other questions coming through. So if you do think of questions later that you want, you can go ahead and type those and we'll come back around to them. Great. So if you are interested in waste and recycling and you would like to learn more about this, then you might be interested in the Master Compost and Solid Waste course. So that course is another 8-week consecutive course. It starts in February, on February 9th, 3 hours from 6 to 9 p.m. We are still finalizing the speaker for that class, but we hope to have that done soon. However, you can register for that class now, and it will predominantly focus on composting as one of the key components of setting up a home compost and learning how to do that, or a vermicompost with worms. But it will also take you for a much deeper dive into waste reuse, reduce, and recycling. So that'll be a great one for you if you're interested.
Hi, Judy. Can I interrupt for a second?
Sure.
One of the questions that an attendee asked was, where will these 2 courses, the master courses, be held, the Master Resource Conservation and the Master Composting and Solid Waste? That's still to be determined right now. We're working with Cascadia to firm that up, but it will be somewhere within San Mateo County, and please do check back on the Recycleworks website for the venue update as well as other updates.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, I'm really excited because it's 6:50, so we're right on time, which means that I get to introduce our next speaker, who's going to be speaking on the water systems and conservation. So Kyle Ramey is a recent alumni of the AmeriCorps program, Civic Spark, which was a 1-year commitment to the governor's initiative to build capacity of local governments to address climate change in California. So during his time with Civic Spark, he worked with the San Mateo County Energy Watch on water-related projects specifically dealing with K-12 public schools within San Mateo County. Additionally, he worked with the Bay Area Water Supply and Conservation Agency on coordinating outreach campaigns concerned with their various water conservation rebate programs. He's developed and implemented a new water conservation public education program and laid the groundwork for a school audit pilot program that would assist public schools in implementing water-saving measurements. He currently works at the Bay Area Water Supply and Conservation Agency as a conservation representative assisting with various water-related programs. So welcome, Kyle.
Thanks, Judy. Can you hear me okay?
I can. Oh, and you know what? I need to load up your presentation. So I realized I should have done that. Let me go ahead and get your presentation up there. Sorry about that. There we go.
Okay. So as Judy just said, my name's Kyle. I work for Bosca, and I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about water conservation today, a little bit about our water supply, where we get our water from, and a little bit on the drought update as well. Next slide, please. So today, like I said, we're going to talk about the water system overview, where we get our water from and how much. We're going to talk a little bit about the drought and the main reasons why the governor initiated the 25% mandatory cutback in California and what local member agencies are doing right now to meet those targets. We're going to talk about ways to conserve, analyze current water use, check out simple steps to save indoors and outdoors, a little bit on leak detection, and we'll talk about the rebate and incentive programs that we participate in with our member agencies. So the Bay Area Water Supply and Conservation Agency is a special district that represents the interests of 26 major water suppliers, mostly on the peninsula in San Mateo County, but we do have a couple in Santa Clara and Alameda counties as well. The service area covers about 1.7 million residents and over 39,000 businesses, which all rely on the San Francisco regional water system. We have three main goals. Those goals are to ensure a reliable water supply, high quality water, and at a fair price. This graphic shows pretty much the percentages of where we get our water from. 85% comes from the up-county watershed, which are places like the new Don Pedro Reservoir, Lake Lloyd, Lake Eleanor, and of course Hetch Hetchy, which most people know of. 15% comes from our local watershed, which things like Crystal Springs Reservoir, which we normally like to keep as full as possible in case of emergency or if the SF regional system goes down. Next slide. This is a better graphic to show you who all of our member agencies are and where they reside. As you can tell, most of them are on the peninsula, but we do have a couple that wrap around the bay until you get into East Bay MUD's territory. This graphic here illustrates our gallons per capita per day, gross and residential. Gross is illustrated by the dark blue, and residential is illustrated by the light blue. And as you can tell, since 1986, we've definitely been decreasing from 185 to 124 and 104 to 77. The next graphic, next slide, also kind of falls in line with that. Although we've had 25% more people within our service area, we've been using 10% less water use today, which means that we're becoming more efficient with our resources, and the conservation measurements that we're putting in play are actually working, which is great news. But the not so great news is that California, as many of you know, is in a historic drought. The State Water Board passed its first mandatory urban water limits in state history, which is a 25% cutback throughout California, but that does mean something different for each member agency within California. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. And the main reason they did this was because of the lack of snowpack within the Sierra Nevadas. As you can tell, in 2011, we had about 171% of the average, and now in 2015, we only had 5%. So this was one of the biggest reasons why they initiated the big cutback. These are our member agencies, and like I was saying a little earlier, the 25% mandatory reduction across California means different things for different agencies. For example, places like City of Daly City or San Bruno use about 40 to maybe 55 possibly 60 gallons per day per person. And so they're in a different tier, like the 8% conservation standard, than places like Hillsborough or California Water Bear Gulch, which is Portola Valley, Woodside area, which are much higher water users, so they have to conserve much more. If Daly City had to conserve any more than 8%, they might even be below health standards. So that is why they're tiered. That's why, depending on where you live, you're going to have different conservation standard and different restrictions. These are the prohibited uses of water for everyone within the state, especially within our service area. Prohibited uses for everyone include things like no, you can't use water to wash sidewalks and driveways. You need to wash your car if you're going to with a shut-off nozzle. Potable water and decorative water features that do not recirculate water, it's all prohibited. But it's not just for residents, it's also required for water suppliers. They have to achieve that designated conservation standard. They have to notify customers about leaks. There's definitely a long list of things for water suppliers that they have to check off. Also businesses are affected by it too. They can only offer water to customers that request it, and hotels must provide guests with the option of having their towels and linens laundered daily. But these are just a few of the many restrictions. So what can be done to conserve? We've been talking a lot about the drought and where water comes from, but how do we actually conserve as residents and as commercial entities? BOSCA and its member agencies offer a variety of programs depending on who your water provider is. These rebates and education programs can change, but we do provide a lot of rebate programs that assist customers in providing incentives for them to conserve more around the house. And a lot of water agencies actually also offer a lot of free stuff. So always check with your water agency to see if you can get some free shower heads or things like that. And we also offer free education programs as well. So we're going to get into ways to conserve around the house, and I think we're going to start with indoor first. But first we have a polling question, and we're going to get into this in a little bit. But what do you guys think is the largest source of water usage in a single-family home? Is it laundry, landscaping, dishwasher, or showers?
Okay, we've had about 70% of the people vote. They voted quickly. Anybody else want to take a guess before we close the poll? Okay, you ready? All right, I'm going to close it. I'm going to share the results. Okay, do you have the results?
Showers, huh? Yes, I do. So it looks like 80% of you guys said showers and 20% said laundry. So let's see what the answer is. So actually, landscaping takes up most of it. And this is taken over the entire U.S., but the majority of our water that we use at home is for our landscapes, our lawns. And that's why when I showed you the conservation standards earlier, that's why places like Hillsborough and Portola Valley and things like that use a lot more water, is because they have very big landscapes. But however, laundry, dishwashing, toilets, showers, they all have a piece of the pie. So we're going to talk about indoor first. This is from Cal Water Mid-Peninsula, basically San Carlos, Belmont area. And the top three indoor biggest water users are showers, toilets, and faucets. So we do have some rebate programs associated with that, and we'll talk about those in a minute. First, let's talk about low-flow shower heads. So your standard shower head gives about 5 to 8 gallons per minute, and a low flow is typically 1.5 to 2 gallons per minute, but they do vary. The biggest question I get is, I don't want to sacrifice, my comfortable shower for something that's not going to be, not going to have a high flow. But manufacturers have definitely taken this into account, and these have been on the market for quite a while. So they take other factors into account, and I can guarantee you can find one for a very low cost that is saves a lot of water as well. There's other flow options such as flow control inserts, shower shutoff valves. These aren't very common, but people definitely use them if you like to do other things in the shower, like brush your teeth or shave or things of that nature. You can actually turn it down to a trickle, and then when you're done, turn it back on, and the water's still hot, and you're not using water when you don't need to. And most of them check most of them have the gallons per minute on them. However, if you don't know, an easy way to do it would be to hold a gallon container under the shower head, like a milk jug perhaps, clock the time it takes to fill, and for example, if it fills in 15 seconds, then you know the flow rate is 4 gallons per minute, and then you can adjust accordingly. Water efficient faucets, your standard gives you about 2.2 gallons per minute. If you install a water efficient one with a WaterSense logo, that's the main thing you always got to look for when buying products if you want to be water efficient. Kitchen can give you about 1.8 gallons per minute or less because you're using it all the time. The bathroom about 1.2, and a public bathroom gives you about 0.5. Many water agencies provide things like free faucet aerators upon request, so definitely check with them to see if you can get those and reduce the flow of your faucets. Usually at this point in the presentation we like to show a little video, but it's pretty simple to explain. Most of the time when your toilet's not using a lot of water, a lot of the times it's because of a leak. A great way to check your leak is to turn off the water supply and then put a dye tablet, which you can also get for free from some of your water agencies, in the top part of the toilet and leave for about 20 minutes, come back, and if there's dye within the bowl, then you know you have a leak, and then it's probably time to either switch out the toilet or call a plumber, or you can fix it with a flapper valve as well. So if that toilet is broken and using a lot of water, we definitely urge people to take advantage of the high efficiency toilet rebate. For member agencies that participate with us on this program, we offer up to $125 per toilet if you replace one that uses at least 1.6 gallons per flush. The $125 rebate has to be a MAP Premium HET, and we'll talk about what that is in a second. And we offer $75 per standard HET, and we'll also talk about those. So an HET is a modern water-efficient toilet that is designed to use 1.28 gallons per flush or less. Like I said, the water agency rebates of up to $75 are available. A while ago, it used to be 7 gallons was the standard, and then it was 5, and then it was 3.5, and now we're even getting down to below 1 gallon per flush. But standard HETs usually start at 1.28, and the $75 rebate is available for those. And then a MAP Premium model. This is something that we issued this fiscal year. We're trying to kind of shift the market to get more people to buy MAP Premiums to continue to have more water-efficient appliances. MAP Premiums have a list of specifications that qualify as a MAP Premium. There's 164 qualified toilets from about 30 different brands, and you can get them at Home Depot, Lowe's, whatever. We offer rebates of up to $125 for those, and they can't flush with more than 1.1 gallons. People ask me sometimes when they don't have, it doesn't list it on the toilet, what the gallons per flush is. A great way to find out is to follow these simple 4 steps. Shut the water off completely, flush the toilet, or before you flush the toilet actually, mark where the water levels are on both the tank and the bowl, then flush the toilet. Use a gallon jug to fill up both the tank and the bowl, and for example, if it takes 3.5 gallons to fill up both those things up to the watermark line that you previously made, then you know that your toilet is 3.5 gallons per flush. So it's just a quick, easy tip on how to find out. And the rebate application on the right is a little out of date, so sorry about that. We actually offer up to 125. Most of our information can also be found on www.bosca.org. This is the clothes washer rebate that we have for indoor as well. We offer up to $150 for an Energy Star most efficient model. We do have a list of the qualifying models on our website, and it's linked to the PG&E website. $50 comes from PG&E, and the remaining $100 comes from the participating water agency. But definitely make sure that it is an Energy Star most efficient, because those are the only ones that qualify for the rebate. All right, let's move over to outdoors now. We do have a couple rebate programs and definitely a lot of water efficient education classes that deal with outdoors. Just for example, a simple step is just to use a broom instead of a sidewalk to wash or to sweep down the pavement or the driveway, and always use a hose nozzle with an automatic shut-off valve so that there's no leaking or anything like that. Only water lawns and plants at night or early morning before dawn. That reduces the evaporation so the soil stays moist for longer and your plants stay healthier for longer. Test the soil moisture before actually watering. If the top 2 inches feel damp, you do not need to water. Some of these moisture meters you can get from your water agency for free or buy them at Home Depot for very cheap. Also, this is a requirement, but follow your city's watering schedule. We'll talk about that in a minute, but it's typically 2 days per week, and it's only for a certain amount of hours, and it's almost always at nighttime. But however, the rainy season is here, and yes, it will rain again, and it's important to adjust your irrigation timers, not just to stick to the 2 days per week maximum, but if it rains, you obviously don't need to water, so it's important to stay on top of that as well. So this is what I was alluding to earlier. Most of our participating water agencies, or most of our member agencies, I should say, have adopted this schedule. Not all of them, so it is important to check with your agency, but most of the time it's going to be odd number addresses are Monday and Thursday, and even number addresses are Tuesday and Friday. So keep that in mind. All right, we're going to get into recommendations and opportunities. BayAreaGardening.org, which I'll talk about close to the end. Lawn Be Gone program, which is one of the biggest water savers programs that we offer. The Water Efficient Landscape classes, which roll out every spring and fall, and the Rain Barrel rebate. So the Lawn Be Gone program is one of the most time-intensive. It is a long process. However, it definitely results in a beautiful-looking landscape, and it definitely conserves the most water. As I mentioned in a previous slide, 54% of our water goes to our lawns most of the time, and so replacing it with drought-tolerant landscaping is really great. Most people think that all drought-tolerant plants are succulents or cactus, but I can assure you that there's thousands of plants that you can choose from that are beautiful, that don't need water. Definitely check out our website if you're interested, and learn a little bit more about this program. Our Rain Barrel rebates, which are actually some of our most popular rebate program, which is probably our most popular rebate program. We offer up to $100 for 50 gallons of storage capacity, or up to the total cost of the rain barrel. We think that this is really popular mainly because it's a very tangible way to save water. You actually get to see it. It's not like replacing a toilet where you may or may not see it on your utility bill, but here you definitely get to see it. You get to apply it. It's very easy to install, and they're relatively cheap. In conjunction with the San Mateo County Pollution Prevention Program, we offer up to $100 if the member agency participates. And if you live in San Mateo County and your member agency does not participate, you're still eligible for the $50 rebate. We do have some links on bosca.org for how to check for leaks, and they're great things. I mean, if you think that your water bill is skyrocketing, or you're not sure, you've installed all the water efficient appliances and you're still not seeing that reduce on your utility bill, it's probably because you have a leak. We like to recommend the California Urban Water Conservation Council website to look a little bit more on how to check for leaks, so definitely check that out if you're interested. Cal Water is another one of our member agencies. They have a very large service area, so we decided to put some of their programs in here. They don't participate with us on any of our rebate programs this year, but we decided to put a slide in here to talk a little bit about theirs. They also have a high-efficiency toilet rebate, a clothes washer rebate, a smart irrigation controller, water use efficiency evaluations that they do for their customers, the free sprinkler nozzles program, which actually we're rolling out in a couple member agencies too next fiscal year. They also have their own turf removal rebate program, and they issue conservation kits as well. So if you're a Cal Water customer, that's something you'd want to look into. As I mentioned earlier, we have the Water Efficient Landscape classes. These are free education classes that are launched in the spring and fall of every year. They teach homeowners how to do sustainable landscaping, alternatives to lawn, edible landscaping, habitat gardening. There's a bunch of really great workshops, and we've seen drastic improvements in participation. They're 100% free. You may even get some free things when you go. Go to bosca.org/classes to learn a little bit more, and in the spring we're going to be rolling out a whole new schedule, so keep an eye out for that. And this is actually my favorite resource that we provide, especially if you're thinking about removing the lawn and replacing it with drought-tolerant plants. We have our whole list of drought-tolerant plants, and if they're California native and they're drought-tolerant, they will qualify for the program. It's a great way to look at how big they're going to get when they're fully grown. It has gardening tips and irrigation calculator. You can create your own list so that when you go back to it and say these are the plants I want, they all have pictures next to them. It definitely helps when you're planning one of those projects. So this is something I definitely urge people to look at. It's bayareagardening.org, and we have it on a link on our website as well. In conclusion, water conservation really benefits everybody. It increases the water system reliability. It reduces water and energy costs because energy is used to pump the water. It promotes efficient use of our resources, which is getting more important as generations go on. We need to reinforce that, especially in the younger generation, to let them know that resources are not infinite, and we need to conserve them as much as possible. And it benefits the environment, which also benefits the community's sustainability as well. And this is our website, bosca.org. Urge everybody to check it out, and we have a bunch of great resources. We're actually launching a new website here coming soon. I think it's at the beginning of the calendar year. We'll have a bunch of new resources on there as well. Here's my contact information. If call that number at any time. More than welcome to answer any questions regarding our rebate programs or conservation tips, anything like that. So do reach out to us if you have questions regarding any of the things that I covered today.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Kyle, for that presentation. Let me do a few things here. I got to switch over back to the other presentation.
Judy, while you're switching over, we got a few questions that I wanted to go over from some of the attendees.
Great.
So Paula, she asked, Kyle, I think this is a question for you. Is the state drought as desperate as we hear? If so, why does the governor not put a ban on bottling our water and requiring residents to make the cut?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that one more time? You broke up a little bit.
Sure. Is the state drought as desperate as we hear? If so, why does the governor not put a ban on bottling our water and requiring residents to make the cuts?
That is a tough question. That's not really my expertise, but yes, it is as desperate as they make it sound. Good news is, though, the member agencies are all meeting their water conservation targets. So the messaging that it's getting out to all the customers, residents are doing a really great job in conserving. But I wouldn't know much about the plastic bottling and all that. Sorry.
Okay.
And a few other general questions. A few people asked if the PowerPoint will be shared. Yes, we will be sharing the PowerPoint after the webinar later on. And another question specifically about the master courses, will these classes be back-to-back so that we can attend both? Yes, they will be back-to-back. So the resource conservation, master resource conservation class will be held on Wednesdays, and the master compost solid waste will be held on Wednesday evening. So you can theoretically attend both if you like. That's it.
Okay, great. So if you are interested in water, again, the Master Resource Conservation course that starts in January will be covering water and energy and some green building, and we have a couple of great guest lecturers, as well as Laura McCoyne, who will be leading that. So it's a great class if you have interest in a lot of these topics we've been talking about tonight. Okay, so we have a couple more minutes left. We're going to go ahead and finish off our presentation with a little bit on pollution prevention. We're not going to take a deep dive here. Mostly want to just alert you to some of the programs and resources available. So when we talk about pollution prevention, we're basically talking about reducing or eliminating waste at its source. We want to promote the use of non-toxic, or at least less toxic substances. Implement conservation when it comes to these materials, and then reusing materials rather than putting them in the waste stream to ensure adequate and most important, we want to ensure adequate and convenient collection of these toxic materials and pollutants. And currently in California, only about 10% of household hazardous waste is actually properly disposed. So that's why we really want to focus on sharing some of the ways that you can do this properly in the county and in your community. And a lot of the recent legislation that we've seen come through California has actually been focused on these hard-to-handle materials that are ending up improperly disposed. So making sure that that doesn't happen through legislative actions has proved to be one of the key ways that we can do that. Some of the laws that we've seen associated with that over the years, one of the most popular pieces of legislation, the bottle bill, was passed back in 1986, and that actually puts a redemption fee on beverage containers so that they're returned, because litter is a big issue associated with pollution, and so making sure that those bottles and cans don't end up as litter in the highways and the streets is so important. So the bottle bill was one of those laws. Another law that was passed a little more than 10 years ago, I can't believe that's been that long already, it was SB 20, which put the fee on CRTs, screens, and televisions, so that you pay up front, and then you can take those back to the retail for collection. And then a lot of communities operate programs. We'll talk more about that. More recently, we've had the Paint Recovery Act, which puts a fee on gallons of paint, and now you can take those back to Dunn Edwards and other retailers that sell the carpet. And the used mattress are also two more recent pieces of legislation in which industries have set up programs to help collect those at no fee. So lots of things going on legislatively to really make sure that these problem materials that often pollute or are a source of litter are being taken care of. On the local level, sometimes things don't actually get necessarily legislative action at the state, but there's a lot of things going on locally in communities and cities throughout the state. So in local policies, we're seeing zero waste plans implemented. Plastic bag ordinances are huge. Polystyrene or styrofoam ordinances, also bottled water ordinances, and more recently the big one is the safe drug disposal. So I'm going to start highlighting a few of those and the importance real quickly before we talk about some resources. So in plastic bags, the issue is there's 20 billion single-use plastic grocery bags generated every year in California. Most of those end up in either landfills or they end up as litter. And the thing is, plastic doesn't biodegrade. The worst thing about it, especially the thin film plastic bags, is that they just break down into smaller and smaller particles that then go into our soil and into our water. They're creating a huge issue environmentally. So San Mateo County actually did an environmental impact report, and San Mateo County back in 2012 presented to the Board of Supervisors an ordinance that would eliminate single-use plastic bags. That was actually passed, and most all of the cities in the county have partnered on this ban. And the great thing about it is there's an alternative. You know, we have reusable bags that we can purchase to make using single-use plastic bags not even necessary. Another big one that's going on right now is the Bay Area pharmaceutical, so safe drug disposal, and in San Mateo County they more recently passed an ordinance to make this available to the community. So that just passed in April. And basically the issue is just that for materials ending up either being flushed down the toilet, put in the trash, put in recycle bins, they pose a health risk. They pose risk to children, they pose risk to the sanitation workers, there are issues in the water treatment facilities, and ultimately a lot of it ends up out in the oceans. Sharps are another huge one. The danger associated with those is very huge. So we want to make sure that people are safely disposing of the unused medications and the sharps. E-waste is another big one. So e-waste is considered a hazardous or universal waste. It's one of the most rapidly growing segments of our disposal system right now, and the issue is that they contain significant amounts of toxins inside of them. So we're talking about things like fluorescent light bulbs, paints, pesticides, cleaning products, and other electronics all fall into this e-waste and hazardous waste category. And they pollute the oil, they pollute the air, they pollute the water. E-waste in particularly can include items like computers, televisions, fax, stereos, electronic equipments. And most people go through these rapidly. So they're not with us very long before we're getting rid of them, and oftentimes we're not even getting rid of them because they're broken or they don't work. It's just because they're outdated and we want something new. So one thing we suggest is just donating these items. There's a lot of nonprofit organizations out there that will collect working electronics. But then for those that aren't working, there's other proper means for disposal of them within the county that we're going to talk about. So here are some of the programs that are operating in San Mateo County. The County Environmental Health operates an at-your-door collection program, and I'll show you on the website where you can access this, but many of the haulers are working with this program where you can have materials collect at your door. There's also drop-offs, and the drop-offs are available for most all of the HHW, household hazardous waste materials that we mentioned, like paints and electronics and pesticides, cleaning products. And you can either do it through a special drop-off event, which rotated areas throughout the county, or you can drop it off at the permanent facility, which is open Thursday through Saturday. There's also a used oil collection program that many of the haulers participate, and will do that from your home. And then on the other end, programs that aren't operated through the county or the local haulers, but that are still available to the residents. One of them would be Paint Care, and this is huge. So Paint Care oversees the paint program, and basically the fees that are paid when purchasing paint go to operate this organization that then has established collection site with all of the major retailers. So most all of the major retailers, you can bring back old paint for free. So you don't have to worry if you bought it at that store, you don't have to take it back to the store you bought it at. Any of these major retailers will take back, and if you go to paintcare.org, you just put in your zip code and it pops up this great map of all of the local places near to you, mostly within a mile or two. Also, other major retailers, home improvement stores, have collection sites for a lot of problematic materials, especially the rechargeable batteries. Some do fluorescent tubes, plastic bags. Other things you can tap into, again, the thrift stores. Some of the sheriff departments also have collection sites, especially for the pharmaceuticals, sharps, things like that. So there's a lot of great options for you to make sure that you are properly disposing of some of these materials. And then just the issue with the stormwater and ocean pollution, we want you to think about some of the things that you can help prevent some of the problems going on with the pollution in the ocean. Obviously in San Mateo County, many of you live closer to the ocean and the bay than someone living inland. But even living inland, the water supply, the pollution going into the storm drain still flows directly to local creeks, the bay, and the ocean without being treated. So it's really important that we keep contaminants and pollutants out of the storm system so that they're not posing an issue to wildlife, people, and to our fish system. So some of the things you could do is just making sure that you're not putting any pollutants into the storm drain. That might include motor oil or auto fluids. Sometimes it's done directly and purposely, and sometimes it's just due to leaking cars, so making sure that your automobile doesn't have leaks. Same thing with using any cleaners or pesticides outside, making sure that there's not runoff and that they're not being used close to storm drains. Soap from car washing, weed killers, illegal dumping, things when you throw stuff out your car window or just litter, all of that ultimately end up in the gutters, and so we don't want that to happen. Other things, pet waste left on lawns and streets ultimately could end up in the water systems. Even things that you wouldn't think about as posing a threat, but just leaves and lawn clippings, if not properly managed, can clog the storm drains. Soil from construction, and basically all of that is carried then, by the rain into the storm drains. So we want to take care of our ocean health, and a lot of that is keeping the trash and the pollutions out of it. Other things you could do to help is participating in cleanup events. So it's a great way to connect with your community. Okay, so we're going to start to wrap up here with one last poll question, and we're not picking on anybody. We don't know who answers which responses, but just have you improperly disposed of any of these items before? Paint, light bulbs, batteries, e-waste, or hazardous waste? It would be great for us just to get an idea of, what items have been improperly used just because you didn't, or disposed because you didn't know how to dispose of them. So if you could share that information, and I think you can pick multiple answers here. You should be able to. You should be able to pick any that apply. Yeah, we're getting some votes in. So I'll give you another second or two, and then we'll close that one out. Anybody else want to vote one last time? Okay, so light bulbs is huge. It's a challenge. So there are options out there: batteries, and then paint and hazardous waste, and e-waste. Seems like more people know how to dispose of e-waste on this call, but things that we probably could help point you in the right direction would be light bulbs and batteries, and a lot of communities are doing that now. And you'll find resources to where you can find out more information on this through some of these websites. So recycleworks.org, again, I'm going to show you quickly where you can access that, flowstobay.org, County Environmental Health, and then a lot of the hauler websites are great places. So I'm going to just flip here real quick to the website to show you the same where we were before. On the home page, if you click on this hazardous waste link, this is going to take you to a lot of great information and a lot of other links for the drop-off, for door-to-door pickup, what items are accepted, what to do with batteries, what to do with paint, what to do with electronics, rechargeable batteries. So lots of great information here that you can tap into if you want to find out more. And then I just want to alert you to a couple things before we get off the seminar. So again, the upcoming classes that we talked about, in addition to the 2 8-week classes, we'll be having independent workshops on green building and water conservation. We'll also have a green business class, and the goal is to really just empower and get more volunteers in our community to help share about these great programs and all the information and the things going on in the county and on the state level, and how businesses and residents can tap into all the resources. So we have one last polling question for you. Let me see. We'd like to know what information would be most valuable to you to find out more about, so that would be helpful. Is it more the solid waste recycling and composting, more information on energy, water, pollution prevention, or green business or green building? So if you want to share which one of those you would like to find out more information on, we'll go ahead and track those. And then Before we end, I just want to let you know that as soon as we do log off this webinar, a poll will pop up. It's just a couple questions that we'd like to get some feedback from you on how valuable this was, what other information we could help you with. So we'd appreciate it if you would do that survey as soon as this ends. I did want to let you know that it was great to have Kyle on the call. He was a last-minute speaker for us, so you'll see that he's not on the survey. It says Andre Johnson. So if you just go ahead and could answer Andre, know that Kyle is now Andre, that would be great. And I want to thank our other panelists who are with us here today, Jackie Falconio, Kyle Ramey, and Insu Lim. So I see that it looks like solid waste, recycling and pollution prevention and composting were some key things that people wanted to hear more about. So we'll make sure to follow up with more information. Don't forget that the handouts are available at the bottom and we will send that copy to you. And if you have any more questions, you can contact Insu or myself, and we really appreciate you guys taking the time tonight to join us for this webinar, and hopefully we'll see you in some of our additional classes. So thank you very much.